so much happened, because that's when I first realized I have to deal with my fear of speaking. If I want to make the difference I say that I want to make, I had to deal with this newly developed health situation and the breakdown of my overall health. The first 5 years, I mostly was still dealing with getting more well, recovering from just being run down like crazy, and also dealing with being able to speak effectively. And somebody told me this company, so I went and got very involved in that company and actually got the training I wanted, became a leader there. But what I saw in those 5 years is health is a function of participation. I noticed that the more I brought myself to others and participated in life and got out there, the more well I was. I mean, it would even be like I didn't feel well. I felt like I was coming down with something, and then I had to go and lead a 3-hour program. I'll tell you, by the time that thing was over, I was good. I was not sick. It did not get worse again.
Welcome to the Care We Need podcast, where we bring together a variety of experts to help you win the war on complex illness. With me today is Donna Riccardo, a speaker coach who is an expert at navigating a 40-year healing journey from autoimmune disease. I loved getting to hear how she learned to thrive in her physical health from such an unexpected angle. This woman understands how to look at illness holistically. If you're navigating a complex illness, Donna's story will encourage and empower you to take steps you never thought were related to the illness you're battling. And if you're a health, wellness, or human services professional, listen all the way till the end, where we will dream about a better way to launch a complex illness healing journey together. Are you ready? Let's go. Donna, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you here. I'd love to just ask you to start out just by sharing your timeline of when you first noticed symptoms and highlighting which steps of your journey were the most helpful or unhelpful or even harmful.
Well, two things happened around the time it was my late 20s. And so it was like 35 years ago. And I think they're related. I don't really know. But two things happened. One is that I had been living in New York City at that point for about 6 years and was very indulgent. Just, I was in my 20s. I'm in New York City. I'm eating out all the time. I'm eating a lot of sugar, sometimes instead of meals like ice cream sundae or whatever, and not really eating meals. And again, eating out a lot. And, felt fine because I was young and it didn't matter. I was in a very high profile hair salon at the time. I was very active. Lived in the middle of the city, and there was like a lot. And all of that wore me down. My adrenals were shot by the time, the symptoms were so bad I couldn't ignore them anymore. And my adrenals were shot. I had cystic acne all under my jaw, under my chin and throat. And I couldn't stay awake. I couldn't stay asleep because of the adrenals, and I had chronic sinus infections, and they just kept giving me antibiotics. And at one point I went, third round of antibiotics in 2 months, third round in 2 months. That's not right. Something's wrong with this picture. And around that same time, I also began to get numb little fingertips, and that progressed and got worse. And eventually somebody told me, I started seeing alternative practitioners around that time because all that antibiotic thing I knew that wasn't right. So I went to a holistic guy, and he's like, yeah, you have Raynaud's, and you can either take Viagra or you can stay warm. So I didn't get tested or anything, though. I went, okay, fine. I believed him, and he was right. And I said, fine, I'll stay warm.
It's Raynaud's.
Raynaud's, it's an autoimmune circulation condition where the circulation suddenly leaves your hands and feet too, but the hands are way worse. So let's say the worst is if I touch something very cold and metal, it's fairly instant and they are numb. But if I don't even have to feel cold for my hands to decide that they need to behave that way, and they will get numb. And the worse it is and the colder it is. And the one time before I realized how bad it was, I had gone skiing, and I was like in the middle of like a side of a mountain with some guy that I had just met, and we're out there in the middle of nowhere, and they were so cold I felt like I had cinder blocks instead of hands. Fortunately there was a lodge on the side of the mountain, and we were able to stop and warm up, but that was pretty terrible. And that's when I realized I have a real problem. But I didn't do anything about it till several years ago, there's still nothing I did about it. I just got testing and got it confirmed that yes, there's an autoimmune condition. And they told me, yes, not only is it your hands and not only is it Raynaud's, it's actually called CREST. And there were 4 other symptoms.
And what are those?
So I don't remember what some of them are called because they're like weird long medical names, but one of them is having like tiny red dots on my nose, and there's some name for that. Little tiny broken capillaries around like my hairline, and so it's 2. The Raynaud's is 3. So calcinosis, so I get painful, hard little bumps sometimes, and something else, esophageal something like issues. Yeah.
So you had this early onset in your 20s, probably aggravated by lifestyle issues of, probably the sugar roller coaster, the caffeine and the sugar and the sleep and the lack of sleep, all of that, taking something that you may or may not have been predisposed to developing and then definitely taking you over the edge. And then you used usual care and you went to different doctors or maybe even the same doctor, and you just kept getting antibiotics just to manage the symptoms of the sinus infection, which was somehow related to circulation, which is possible. Circulation is an important part of clearing your body of pathogens. And so if your circulation is low, then you might, gather pathogens and not be able to dispose of them. And then you decided to find a holistic guy. So like a naturopath, or is it an acupuncturist? Do you remember?
He was, I don't really know what he was.
Mm-hmm.
He says he was from France. We think he was French Canadian, but he
Mm-hmm.
was trained in herbs and homeopathy, and he was clearly French, but I don't think he was from France. But her herbs and homeopathy and supplements and diet. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew some people, I kept running into people. And after the third person went, "Oh, I see Dominique for that. I think I just need to go see Dominique." And actually
Mm.
canceled and I had with Dr. Atkins, like the Dr. Atkins at the time was like a big name. Canceled that appointment and I went to see Dominique and he got me better within 2 months. And even prior to that with the acne, I had been given Accutane. So then I also had that going on too.
Mm. It's just so hard on your system, actually. These
Yeah.
huge doses of vitamin A, which vitamin A actually manages a lot of other functions. So when you all of a sudden superdose it, then all these other functions in your body can get way out of whack,
Yes, and when I was younger and I had normal acne, I'd been given a lot of tetracycline.
which is the antibiotic, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So there's a lot of research now that links young or significant recurring antibiotic exposure with poor gut health with immune issues, with mental health issues, because the biome in our gut is crucial to not only how we process food, but really like your personality even. There have been studies where you take a really positive person and you extract some of the bacteria from their gut and you inject it into someone who's depressed and they become a positive person. Like the connection is just really wild. But don't try that at home because some people have tried that at home and they apparently died from like infections. So you have to do it in a special way. So you mentioned homeopathy. I looked up homeopathy because someone mentioned it the other day and it was discovered in Germany and developed in Germany. So even though it has this kind of Eastern-like approach, it's actually Western medicine, a form of Western medicine. It's just not practiced that significantly in America. And then, adding nutrition and stuff, which right now, weirdly, is still considered alternative healthcare in the US, where you are what you eat, right? We say that, but our healthcare system doesn't really seem to accept that in a broad way. So you got better. And then you more recently said that you decided to get tested, probably through globulin tests for your autoimmune condition. It's like an immune system test to see if you have these autoimmune particles.
My functional medicine person finally convinced me that I should do it, and I just went and did
Mm-hmm.
it, and it was an autoimmune blood test. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when they said, "Oh, yeah, not only Raynaud's, but you have these other fun things." And I just thought it was just getting older. That's what I thought it was. None of it was dramatic.
But at the same time, when we had spoken earlier, when I decided to invite you to my podcast, you had said that you had gone through this extensive healing journey, starting with a lot of psychological healing as well as then also some physical healing. I would love to get your story about that because I think some of your story might shed light on one approach to healing autoimmune disease.
Okay. Well, when I was living in New York, I had a but we'll call it a woo-woo moment. It was a moment, and I had been a hairdresser at that time, and I wanted to give back to the other hairdressers in my, like in the hairdresser community and bring advanced training to them. And, they weren't going to like pick up their lives and go to New York like I did. A handful would, but most are not. And I wanted to bring them some of that advanced training because I knew when I came out of school and in the early days, there was no training and I didn't know what I was doing. So I was very compelled to give back. And I found out pretty early on in the hard way that somehow my mind did not connect teaching and public speaking. And I got into a situation where I had to do a presentation in front of hundreds of people and no words came out of my mouth in front of hundreds of my peers. And so that was pretty terrible. I didn't realize I could go learn this. And then another opportunity came along a couple years later. Something similar happened. And for some reason at that point, I went, I think I have to go learn this. And so that was actually the beginning of the spiritual journey. It started out being a fear of public speaking, but it turned into be like health and wellness and spirituality and presence and so energy and so much more. And so that was what launched that and sparked that was the whole spiritual journey.
So you had this desire to have some professional impact, and then it brought up this red flag of, oh, there's something going on within me that I didn't even know about. And then you started progressing to try to find the root cause of this. Now, one of my theories, and you're welcome to agree or disagree, see if this connects with you. One of my theories is that autoimmune diseases, of which I have a couple, are actually your body's physiological demonstration of fear. And when your body is pumping cortisol all the time, that's your stress hormone, right? And you're afraid of many things all the time, other parts of your body, separate from your prefrontal cortex, which is your subconscious thoughts, your body's trying to figure out what is it that's making us so scared? What is it? What's the issue? And because our bodies are like a country, people in the city know some things, people in the city know some things. They're not always communicating, and you really have to spend a lot of time connecting them with roads and phone systems and, fairs and activities and stuff. Some part of your body can say, well, maybe it's us. Maybe we're the problem, and can actually turn and start creating immune system molecules that are supposed to keep you safe from foreign agents like bacteria, viruses, foreign objects embedded in your skin, bad food, but they end up turning on you. And so my working theory is that when we develop some of these chronic illnesses, and if we have any indicators of trauma in our past, that they are actually directly linked, where if we have a lot of childhood trauma or complex trauma and that we lived in a really traumatizing situation for a long duration, then that can manifest, if untreated, into chronic illness like autoimmune disease, like so many others. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Does that match with your experience, or do you have a different theory?
No, it definitely matches. I could speak to that. I would say that there was something that happened up until I was 10 years old. I was very outgoing. I participated in things. I was into the safety patrollers and the brownies and the Girl Scouts and this thing, dancing and, all the things, right? And then my dad, when I was 11, my dad got in a near fatal car accident. And I only just lost him a couple of years ago, but at that time we didn't know. I remember it was the winter and woke up in the middle of the night, got my brother up. My mother had gone to the hospital. My aunt hadn't come over yet to, keep an eye on us. And we were sitting in the winter, shivering on the front porch, not knowing what was going on. I don't know. Some part of me I think, made some kind of decision because I was never the same after that for a very, very, very long time. I just withdrew myself from the world. I became very shy and introverted and scared of everything. And I remember in my, several years later in my mid-teens, trying to fight my way out of that. And fast forward, so the things I already shared with you happened in the in between time. So by the time I was around 29, 30, and I actually began to explore, try to get out of that, what I discovered was that
We'll get back to that conversation in just a minute. Right now, I want to let you know about 2 powerful keynote speeches that Tanai Benes is offering. One to help care organizations improve their systems, and one to help empower the people navigating complex illnesses within them. Her first talk, Win the War on Complex Illness, comes straight from the battlefield. As an intelligence officer in the United States Army, Tanai took the worst performing brigade in her area of operations and helped turn it to the best, using a framework she calls the 4 steps to winning a war. Now she brings that framework to health, wellness, and human services organizations so they can improve complex illness outcomes without rebuilding from scratch. Her second talk, Heal or Die, is deeply personal. Tanai spent years battling complex PTSD, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Today, she's thriving as a wife, mother, author, and entrepreneur. In this keynote, she shares the lessons that helped her take back her power, reclaim her life, and achieve real results despite disintegrated health, wellness, and human services systems in the United States. This talk is perfect for veteran groups, patient and caregiver associations, elder care groups, and civic organizations. Visit tanaibenes.com/speaker to learn more or to book Tanai for your next event. All right, back to it.
So 2 things. One is I was living in New York City. I was like 20 something living alone in New York City. You think that's not scary? It wasn't. And I remember thinking that wherever this thing came from, this autoimmune thing, it can go back where it came from because it showed up. I don't have any evidence for that yet, but I still think that it can go back wherever it came from. But I also thought that I would took the approach of trying to figure out what it was about public speaking. And these 2 things I think go together because what I found is that, and I still will declare this to anybody who's fearful of public speaking, they're not in their body. They're not in their body. And I wasn't in my body. And I didn't know this until I found this energy healer and she was so amazing, and she actually had me experience me not being in my body, and then we worked together. It was through breath work, and had me come back into my body, or come, I don't know if I was ever in it, but come into, my body. So now I will say that people, when they're afraid of speaking, and probably other things too, they leave their body, but that just makes them more afraid. But I also think that I remember at that time too thinking that the energy leaves my hands, because that was the first thing that showed up. That was also some part of me trying to leave the moment and check out, to your point, right? Like leave. So yes, I think all of that goes together.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a long history of healing from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of childhood trauma, and then I self-elected into the military where I got traumatized for a living. So I've had a lot of experience with trauma, experiencing it, healing from it, and then helping others heal from it. And my current working theory is that when we have this life-threatening experience, and it's life-threatening compared to your developmental age, right? So what's life-threatening for a 1-year-old is not for a 10-year-old, is not for a 30-year-old. So when you experience these things really, really matters. When you have a life-threatening event that you feel like is going to totally drastically change your life in some way, like the potential of losing a parent, some part of you can break off, some part of your cognition, and they dissociate. I imagine like we're this brain activity here, and this part just kind of withdraws. That part of you gets stuck in that memory forever. My current working theory is that trauma is actually a memory sequencing disorder. It's primarily where this part of your memory lives in and of itself and has access sometimes to the previous memories, but no access to the following memories. You are stuck at that age forever. Now, that part of you, I believe, also takes control of some part of your bodily function, like your immune system, like your circulation. It takes authority of that. And then when it gets triggered, it activates that part. It affects that part. And that's how it's communicating. Hey, I'm here. I need help. I'm ready to be healed. So when we start generating these symptoms, I believe that is a traumatized part of you that is using that symptom, a change in heartbeat, change in breathing, change in your perception of your body, which is what you're saying. I'm not in my body, right? Change in your ability to even feel your skin or your proprioception, your body movement. And the best thing to do is not to mask symptoms, but to target the root cause. And the root cause is the trauma. And you can do that by going to a trauma therapist. There's so many people who do amazing parts work. And you can say, hey, can you help me integrate this part of me that makes my circulation go away. And then that person can say, okay, what age is that person? How old are they? What's the memory that they're in that they first started making your circulation go away, right? So this is my hope in the next 20 years that I can get this connection between physiological symptoms and trauma dissociation connected so that therapists can use psychological therapies to heal physiological symptoms. Once you remove that, then you can do brain training, which there's plenty of amazing brain training therapists that can help you reorganize the way your body works. Once you heal that traumatized part, you can train your body to stop being afraid of itself, to reduce its immune profile. I've seen people do it. I've done it some myself. So I feel that everything you're saying is intuitively spot on. We have people who have experienced these types of healings. We have people who are going after it, and eventually it will become much more public knowledge. So you had told me a story that I would love for you to share with the audience that just blew my mind in this realm of going to usual care and then going to holistic practitioners. You said that on a certain day, you happened to accidentally have 2 appointments with 2 doctors on the same day. Could you please tell that story?
Yeah. So when I moved out of New York City and I moved to Colorado, and I thought, it'd be a good idea to have a checkup, but I wasn't feeling that great. And there was nothing specific I could point to. But I thought, it'd be good to just get a doctor. And even though I'm not particularly fond of the whole Western model of things, I still thought it's a good idea. So around that same time, I learned of this naturopath that I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time, and I learned of this naturopath. And so just as you said, as it happened, I made an appointment to see the MD that, one day, and then a few hours later, I went to see the naturopath. Well, the MD does what he does, checkup and whatever, like a physical. And he goes, "You're really pretty healthy." And I just thinking to myself, yeah, not really, but I know you were going to say that because I know you don't have a way to look at it any other way than the way you look at it. Plus an older guy too. So he's really, I think, got the blinders on a little bit more even, right? So that afternoon I go see the naturopath and, I'm like 8 pages of, everything from bathroom habits to sleep habits to food to what, all the things. And he goes, "You're really not very healthy, are you?" Same day.
That's wild. The first doctor, did he do blood tests and things, or he just kind of took your vitals? Okay. Did your
I don't know if
vitals?
he did or not. If he did it, he came to some conclusion right then and there that I was healthy. If he did, he would have sent it out, and I wouldn't have known that same day. But I don't think the naturopath did either. I don't think either one of them did any blood work or anything.
So it was just the intake questions that they ask everybody who comes in. And depending on what questions you ask, you get the answers that you're looking
Yep.
for. Isn't
All
that
about the
wild?
question. Yep.
Yeah. So that is one of my core beliefs, ask better questions, get better answers, right? And I think we have providers who want to find the issues so that they can, help you overcome them, but they're not trained to ask the right questions that some other providers are, right? And basic lifestyle things, it sounds like bathroom, food, sleep. It's
Better
wild.
now than it used to be, if we go back 30, 35 years ago, better now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's good progress. And we want to get more and more there. You've mentioned this a few times about doing spiritual healing or physiological healing, some psychological stuff. But I would love to just step back and see, were there any other times where looking at your healing journey in a holistic way really made some unexpected progress? And the way that we define holistic health in Bennis companies, we call it the 7 domains of well-being, called the spiritual well-being, psychological, physical, environmental. Capital is like your resources, not just your finances, but your networks, your skills, and your assets. And then social well-being is your relationships, and then influential well-being. So your profession, your service, giving back to your community, the legacy you're going to leave through your family or anything else. So was there any time that comes to mind where you cared for one part of your well-being and you ended up seeing benefits in another part?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 2 things, and I'm sure they're related, that between the time of being 30 and 40. so much happened, because starting at 30, that's when I first, like realized I have to deal with a few different things. I had to deal with my fear of speaking. If I want to make the difference I say that I want to make, I had to deal with this newly developed health situation and the breakdown of my overall health. And, I had to deal with all of that. And some of that led to some spiritual stuff and the energy healing and, like that. And so during that time, for the like say let's say the first 5 years, I mostly was still dealing with getting more well, recovering from just being run down like crazy, and also dealing with being able to speak effectively. And so I did get to where I was able to do that, and I did get out there and teach in hair salons around the region. That's what I wanted to do. And that led to wanting to get more spiritual about it. And so I did some spiritual training, teacher training, and discovered that I still couldn't really speak if nobody told me what to say, because the other was easy, because here's what you say, here's what you do, haircut, right? It's easy. But this now was a whole other realm. And I was, again, newly scared to death. And somebody told me this company that he was part of, they have great leader training. And so I went and got very involved in that company and actually got the training I wanted, became a leader there, and did that. And that led to my moving across the country. But what I saw in those 5 years is that that whole experience was very, very much about participation. In fact, my job at one time was even participation manager, because I worked for them briefly. But what I saw, and something that we used to say there, is that health is a function of participation. So that was a place that I saw that I noticed that the more I brought myself to others and participated in life and got out there and did things and had those relationships and made that difference and contributed where I could, the more well I was. I mean, it would even be like maybe I didn't feel well. I felt like I was coming down with something, and then I had to go and lead a 3-hour program. I'll tell you, by the time that thing was over, I was good. I was not sick. It did not get worse
That's
again.
powerful. So interesting. So I'd love to reframe what you just said in the terms that I'm offering for our hearers to consider. So I think you wanted to have a professional impact in some way, or shape, or form. You decided to get some additional help. And I would say that's in the influential space, right? You want to be able to, for a season, help other hairstylists, and then eventually be able to help people with your voice more. And you're seeing that there's this stuckness, and it's keeping you separate from your goals, the reason why you are born, the reason why you exist, or the reason why the season of your life exists. And so you decided to get training, and that's more of that influential piece. And you started practicing a little bit. Sounds like fake it till you make it. Show up, do the thing, do your best, learn, grow, and try again. And it started having physical benefits in your life, psychological benefits, and I would probably even argue spiritual benefits, in terms of connecting with a greater, higher purpose, a sense of unity with others. And it's interesting, in the 12-step programs, they say service is a crucial part of recovery. And that's their version of saying that, right? If you come and, you've been sober for one day, good. That's one more day than some people who are going to show up tomorrow. So you can start serving those younger people immediately. And you can, pick up chairs and put them away if you want, but you have to participate in the conduct of the meetings and in the group. And that's part of our healing. And that, that reward that you can receive for doing what you're meant to do, what you feel like, this is my season to be doing this. I mean, that reward, just purely scientifically speaking, creates endorphins and makes you feel happy. And that all that stuff actually helps your healing mechanisms and your internal healing program. It connects you, helps your social health. You start making friends, right? And you start being a member of society that changes society. That's not just watching it happen, but you're actually an agent that can shape a small group or even a large group. Which of your social healing moments do you think was the most memorable in that season or in a similar season?
I learned how to have friends and be a friend. There was this woman in one of the hair salons, and I wanted to be friends with her, and didn't really know how. I had friends when I was little, before all that happened, before I was 10 years old. I had friends then. But as an adult, I really didn't. I always had boyfriends, so that was, like, distracting that I didn't really notice I didn't have girlfriends. And so there was this one woman, her name was Cole. We were around the same age. We were like in our 20s. And I decided I wanted to be friends with her. And I figured out how to be a friend and we became friends. But I remember it was a conscious decision.
What were the things that you figured out? Was it to smile and say something nice? Was it to ask about another person? Was it to do the things you say you're going to do? Do you remember any of those
I don't
healing
really
moments?
remember because all of that came later. I learned all of that and then it became possible to have lots of friends. But with her, I think it was more like just not like a glommy kind of way, but just more being interested, paying attention to her and including her, asking her why this I think was a little more daunting because she wasn't like a I don't know, just like a mousy kind of person. Like I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel like I had to be like she needs a friend. Far from it. She was just the opposite of all that. And I think that's why this kind of stands out as more of a memory because we weren't really very much alike, but we were in the same world and we had come through the same kind of training to get there. But we were very different personalities. And so she was like that, like a confident and like just a very different kind of person, maybe more like how I wanted to be. And so it was a little daunting to make that effort.
Well, I love the idea of deciding you're going to be friends with someone and then pursuing it because I believe that we become like the 5 people we spend the most time with. So if you want to be a more confident person, go make friends with confident people and spend time with them and let them just rub off on you. You don't have to pretend that you're a completely different person to do it, but it does naturally kind of rub off. I've been thinking about why American health has been declining so severely over the past few decades. Obviously, there's processed food things, there's lots of toxins in our environment, there's lifestyle things. We work like dogs, and Europeans come over and they're like, "Guys work so hard all the time." And I'm like, well, if they're working half the hours that we are and they're still running Western Europe, like we probably might not need to work as hard as we do. But one of the things that I've just been hearing over and over and experiencing in my 30s and 40s is just the social isolation. Social isolation. People just becoming more and more lonely. They're still going to work. They're still going out shopping at grocery stores. They're living in more urban areas. So technically, there are more people around them, but they're feeling more and more lonely. And this ability to make friends on purpose and then pursue the welfare of a group of people, not just yourself, is, I think, kind of a skill that we're losing in our society. And it makes me really sad because the primary way that we make friends and build community is you build trust. And building trust is creating opportunities for people to show that they want your welfare as well as their welfare. They want win-wins. Then it's their turn to create an opportunity where you can demonstrate that you're pursuing their welfare and your welfare. And you do enough of that and you can build trust, but it requires this concern for someone else's welfare. And that seems to be missing in a major way. And COVID made it much worse. I'd love to hear your thoughts because you've been watching this 10 years earlier than me. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Let's see. So people think, and maybe it was just my experience, but before I moved here, people tend to think that hairdressers have, very like they're around people all the time and they're social. They're not at all. A lot of them are rather introverted and their social might be being friends with a couple other hairdressers in the salon or a couple other friends somewhere and the lady in her chair, the guy in their chair, right? The person in their chair. And that is a very different phenomenon than like having like a social life. And I didn't really ever realize it because I was kind of introverted and I would have been happy under the bed with the cat, just come out, get fed and petted, right? That's just how I was. And it didn't even the middle of New York City, I didn't mind being alone. So I can't say I can really relate to people being lonely because I'm happy to be alone. And yeah, I always knew how to get around other people if I wanted to. So moving here and then, like really, I stopped doing hair for a long time and went back to it. And that's when I really saw it. And it was just kind of a crazy thing. And then, I stopped doing hair again for good and became an entrepreneur. And people will say, like, oh, being an entrepreneur is very lonely. It's just you and, all, by yourself. And that has been so not my experience because I started because I wanted to be part of things. I like bored with myself. I wanted to be part of things. And so I joined a big chamber of commerce and I got involved in this thing and that thing and, like having people around in these different group programs, became friends with some of the individuals in them, even though they live in other parts of the country or world. And just, like again, like we were saying before, extending myself, making the effort.
We'll get back to that conversation in just a minute, but we have some exciting news to share. If you or someone you love has ever struggled to find the right provider for a complex illness, or if you're a provider that is tired of spending thousands of dollars getting new clients in the door just to find out they're not a good fit for your practice, then this one's for you. 194 million adults and 22 million children suffer from complex illness in the United States, causing over 80% of all American deaths. This isn't the fault of the patients or the providers, but the disintegrated system in which they live and work. Our research found that patients have to try up to 17 different providers and spend up to $50,000, with fewer than 20% of those actually getting cured. On the other side, most providers have to spend around $800 to get each new client in the door, and then have to waste precious hours screening, intaking, and diagnosing that client, just to find out the client is not a good fit for their practice. Now everyone has to start all over again, driving up costs and driving down success. Venice Companies is getting ready to change this. We're launching The Care We Need, a new platform designed to streamline that process for clients and providers alike, and will be able to enter their symptoms once in one place from the comfort of their own home. The platform will then assess their information and match them up with a number of relevant providers in their area and at their price point. The providers will then receive a warm handoff with pre-screened clients committed to their programs, intake data already collected and ready in hand. Go to benniscompanies.com to sign up for our newsletter, be the first to know about user testing opportunities, or donate to support this cause. As always, like, subscribe, and send this episode to someone who would benefit from it. All right, back to it.
That's interesting how you say people predicted that you would be lonely as an entrepreneur. So this is my second entrepreneurial venture with Benna's Companies. My first one, yeah, that's what they. My first one was in 2015 to 2020, and I started a home staging business because of my chronic illnesses. I was partially disabled, had this really irregular energy levels, chronic fatigue and all that. And I couldn't get a regular job, even a regular part-time job, because they wanted a predictable schedule and I couldn't offer that. So entrepreneurship, if you don't know, is actually the most accessible form of employment for people with disabilities. And sadly, it is the least supported for people with disabilities. So I'll put a link in the show notes about the Empower Network. They are a network of people with disabilities who are seeking to succeed in entrepreneurship and helping one another do so. I just found out about them recently, and I think it's a fabulous idea. Anyway, so those first 5 years, I did entrepreneurship. And I was lonely all the time because I was very much by myself. I hated networking events because I went to networking events feeling like I had to sell, and I hated selling. And I think that comes from when I was in high school, I worked in retail. I had so much moral injury, like selling clothes that I didn't believe looked good on people, that I decided I never want to sell anything ever again. And I kind of swung the other way. So for those first 5 years, I would force myself to go to these networking events, and I hated it. And then when I would talk to people, I would tell them about my business. And I almost never got business from them. I think once or twice in 5 years. I finally joined a place called Business Networking International. Have you heard of BNI?
Yes. I was part of it for 4 years. I was in a big chapter and I was also a director. So I used to train new members. I'm very involved.
So you're very involved. Well, I really enjoyed the idea. I was like the first 10 members of a new chapter. And this idea where we get to help one another's businesses succeed. I was like, I could do that. I can sell Donna's speaker coaching, because I can see that she's awesome and I want to see her succeed. And that really fit with my value system. And the issue was that no one was doing it for me, like coming back. We had a hard time like getting real referrals because everybody was there to get referrals I think, in that initial group and not to give referrals. And I think you have to kind of get a few quick wins and build a culture. Not every chapter was like that, but that was my experience. So I did it for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I think I got one referral in that whole time. And then I left. But that idea stuck with me. Now, here's my second time around. I've been an entrepreneur for a couple of years, and I love going to networking things because I want to know, what kind of person are you looking to meet, Donna? Because I might meet that person tomorrow at another networking event, and I will link you guys up. And that fills me. That is in line with my values. And it's part of that participating. It brings your social health up. It brings your psychological health up, your influence in a community. So I loved BNI, love it. If you're new to entrepreneurship or networking, highly recommend. Donna here has done it for 4 years. You've done a lot of things. So BNI, you're a leader in Toastmasters. You're a leader in National Speakers Association of Colorado. Are you at the national level too, or just the state?
No, I'm not a leader in the NSA.
Okay, you're a
Very
member.
active, enthusiastic
Yeah.
member.
Enthusiastic. What other organizations have you been in? You went to school for energy healing. You went
Energy
to
healing,
school
3
for
years.
holistic nutrition. I mean, go ahead, just
Nutrition.
rattle it off.
Let's see, I was part of a personal growth and development company for about 20 years. I am certified in neuro-linguistic programming. I did that, a teacher training for a year. And then I did some spiritual stuff. Louise Hay, if you know who Louise Hay is, you probably do. No, you know, she's a metaphysical teacher. She's very well known, like in the 1980s, probably. She passed away several years ago. So I did her teacher training, and that was, you know, all just like what we're talking about, all about, you know, she healed herself from, I believe it was uterine cancer by shifting the way she talked to herself and related to herself. And so she has a book. Probably her most famous one is called You Can Heal Your Life. And that's what that's all about. It's got a whole index in the back. It's like, if you have this, you say these affirmations. And it's a lot about affirming the things you want to be relating to and believing. And so I did that. I'm sure there's other things.
Did the nutrition school?
And holistic nutrition school for 2 years. So some of these things, you know, overlapped a little. And I just really started this business right before COVID. Thank you very much. A public speaking business right before everything shut down.
Oh, wow. But here you are. You made it.
Yeah.
You didn't
Chamber of
tap out.
Commerce. Yeah, I'm very active in a big chamber of commerce that we have in my area here, and I'm on the Women in Business Leadership team, and I get that about the networking thing, and I was afraid, and I would be the person, I would always like hover around by the food because, you know, people come over to the food and can talk to them there. So we get to eat and, you know, meet people, and, you know, don't have to go out and try to find people to meet, right? So I would do that. And I actually, now that was a long time ago, but a little over a year ago in this Chamber of Commerce, I started and run a networking group. Like, we have a monthly meeting because there wasn't anything like this one. There were no like sit down meetings where people get to say who they are to the whole group of people. So I'm very involved in things.
What I perceive in you as I'm hearing you talk is that this lesson about participation is the path to health was what kind of launched you in that. So people would call it self-development, but what you're trying to do is heal. And you're seeing that there's success in, you know, investing in yourself, investing in others, having a growth mindset, continuous learning. And those are skills that you have to intentionally curate in your life. You have to choose because it is inconvenient, expensive. It takes time and effort. You have to face some false assumptions that you've been living on to do any kind of self-development work, any kind of training at all. Every time I hear of a training, my first gut reaction, still I'm working on killing it, is like, oh, I probably don't need that. And then I have this secondary question of like, do I think that I have the corner on everything they know in that course? Have I figured that out at, 40 something? And then it's like, well, probably not. That's me curating that curiosity to say, is there something I could learn or benefit from? Once I get to the place where I could probably benefit in some way, shape, or form from that training, then it's just a matter of, is now the right time? is it a good fit, or do I need to put it on the shelf, or what? It takes intentional curation. And it sounds like a lot of your healing journey was really from that influential health and thriving domain, having the impacts of that on your social well-being and the impacts of that on your capital well-being, because then it breeds business, and on your psychological well-being from achieving your goals and having friends and being able to put a roof over your head, right?
Exactly.
I've not met many people who have been as invested in self-development and this continuous learning as you. So I just want to highlight that as such a great area of strength.
You know, it was after that feeling of inner freedom. That's what drove it all, drives it still. A little quieter now because I've certainly attained some sense of that now. You know, at first, I thought that it would be more outside of themselves. It's out there. What do I do with my hands? What do I say? How do I say it? And it's not. I say public speaking's an inside job. And it was the more inward I go and the more I connect to myself, the more I can connect to other people, to like pretty much everything.
That's powerful, because when you connect to yourself, then you can be at peace with yourself, and then you can interact with everything outside of you from a place of peace. It's powerful. You've mentioned so many resources that have helped you in your healing journey. Are there any others that you wanted to throw out? I think you mentioned one about the Autoimmune Solution by Amy
Oh,
Myers,
that book?
MD. Would
Oh,
you
I
like to
love
share
that.
that one? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So this woman, she's a doctor. When she was in medical school, turns out she had an autoimmune thyroid condition, and I think they removed her thyroid. And she said, if I knew then what I know now, I never would have let them do that. But she now is an advocate for healthy healing and not letting them do that if that's not what's absolutely necessary. And so she wrote a book called The Autoimmune Solution. One thing I think that's interesting, and she points to this in the book, is that this is like a tangent, maybe a little squirrel, but nobody ever talks about allergies. Allergies are autoimmune, but nobody ever talks about them like that. They don't address them like that. They don't deal with them like that. They don't treat them like that. Then anyway, but she,
That is not a squirrel. I would just like to say. So I have believed that all these years. I'm like, allergies are an immune system disorder. Okay. It's, again, ingest something that's good for you, but your body says not good, right? It's the
or
same
not.
concept. Yeah. Your same concept as autoimmune. Yourself is supposed to be good for you, but then your body says not good. So it's an immune system disorder, but nobody talks about it that way.
Don't. I began to really see, so after I got the autoimmune blood test and got that whole thing confirmed, and then I learned about Amy and I read her book, and then, that my functional medicine person was, she kept telling me to eat the autoimmune diet. So I finally listened to her and believed her and started eating more like that. And my allergies went away. And so she has great articles, very readable. It's very readable. It's not like this heavy scientific stuff. So I highly recommend her. Good articles, great products. Love her. Love to meet
I will
her.
definitely check it out. Well, Amy Myers, MD, if you're listening, you have a fan and you should reach out, because I will be putting Donna's contact information in the show notes. My last question that I'd love to get your thoughts on is about redesigning healthcare in America, dreaming with me to imagine what it could be like, should be like. My question is, if you had all the time, money, skills, connections, power in the world, how would you redesign the health, wellness, and human services space to better heal the complex illnesses that you've been navigating? And I just want to define the healthcare space is when you get sick, you go to people to get better. Wellness is usually to prevent sickness, but it can often reverse early onset of illness as well. And then human services is to improve a person's quality of life while they're still on their healing journey. So they're not well yet, but they don't have to maybe suffer. Maybe they can figure out other ways to do the activities that they were doing, but have been limited from doing.
Well, it's funny, as I mentioned before we hopped on here, that when I was in nutrition school, they had this test that it was like our final exam, and they said, create a healthcare system, like whatever you want. And so now I'll share with you what I made up about that. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but on Star Trek, are you?
Yes, huge.
Those scanners. We'd have scanners. You'd scan it.
Tricorder.
Tricorder, right? And it would tell what's going on, right? So that would be one. Like diagnostics need to be more holistic in some way, right? I mean, diagnostics are great. You need to know what's going on. If I break something, I want I want that x-ray and I want a surgeon. But it's more than that. When do we bring in the health, the wellness person to help you deal? Like, we still have mental, emotional things that go with anything that happens to our bodies, whether it's internal or external, right? So we'd have the diagnostics wouldn't just end with the surface. So I feel like they're very surfacey right now, and they're very compartmentalized, so that we'd have some kind of way that we would not, it wouldn't be optional. It would be normal that we'd include the mental, emotional, not, like you could even say, like, not unlike the TV show, The Biggest Loser, right? They had the therapist. They had them doing the physical things and doing the food thing, but they brought that all together. That should be normal, not like a reality TV show, not an anomaly. But you bring all of that in. I'm even watching my 86-year-old mother right now, and she, like, they were treating her, she had this special doctor for that specialist for this specialist for that. And then, and then she came to visit and fell down and fractured the back of her head, and we kept her here. So she's been here now from Florida for a couple years, right? And I, because I know better, I took her to an integrative MD, and I had them put her on supplements, and we got her off a handful of those medicines because she didn't need them. She just didn't need them. And we tried scaling back on some. We found that worked for some of them, and the other we actually had to keep. But it was more like one person. I took her to a geriatric doctor. Like, they see things so much differently than a regular PC, right? And that was very eye-opening. They actually see an elderly person as a whole person. And our doctor said, my mother's doctor, she said, we might be over medicating her. I was like, like, who does that, right? But the point being that we treat things, like, automatically include all of the elements, spiritual if somebody is so inclined, you bring in the nutrition. Like, the hospital food is just like, oh my God, seriously? You people trying to get well, and you're giving them that crap and that fake food and that artificially green whatever that is, that it's life. And the world of health is the world of health, and it's holistic, and it takes the whole body of a person into account, inside and out. And yet, if I break my leg, I'm still happy to let that person just be compartmentalized. But at the same time, can we bring in the others? Like, what's going to help that leg heal? What's going to help my, mind and my well-being get over or deal with that happened?
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. And here's the kicker. What you just said is in the scientific research. It's there, absolutely, from the 90s on, right? The Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, for example, that done with Kaiser Permanente, where they realized the 20% of people who do 80% of the doctor's appointments with all of their illnesses, like, what's the common denominator between them? And they found that it was when they were children, they had more childhood trauma. If you had 3 or more events, you were very likely to have complex PTSD and therefore a ton of chronic illness. The more events you had, the more chronic illness you had. It was like this dose-response relationship. There are academic research studies showing that positive, hope-centered spirituality has a direct impact on psychological health in inpatient psychiatric units. People who really need a positive impact, they found statistically relevant. If you had a spirituality that was hope-centered, then you got better with the psychiatric and the psychological treatment. But if you didn't, if it was shame, fear, you're going to go to hell if you don't conform kind of centered, then you actually got worse. There are scientific research showing psychological treatment improves depression, improves your likelihood of recovering from surgery, like cardiac surgery, not like little surgery, knee surgery. If you can't get that depression under control, you're probably not going to survive the recovery period for your heart surgery. So let's take care of the psychological. And then there's studies about toxins, their impact on the physical, social well-being, impact on the psychological. It's all in the literature, but we just haven't systemically adopted it. And we need to, because it's all there. We're not like out there being like, should we attach leeches to people and bleed them out to get the sickness out of them? Like, we're not there. We know what makes people well as a society. We're just not doing it. And there are other reasons for that. primarily, I would say one is this is the way we've always done it, culture. And two is if we do the industrial model, everyone like a cog, then we have the most throughput and the greatest profit. And we need to say, how much is profit worth? There are lots of providers who are opting out of the insurance system so that they can give more meaningful care. I bet your naturopath was not covered by insurance. I bet your
Not
Reiki healer
anymore.
wasn't. I bet your holistic nutrition wasn't, but they're doing this so that they can have more time with patients and ask all these questions. But I think there's also some technological things that we can do to maybe consolidate those intake forms and stuff. And those are the things that we're hoping to do at Bennis Companies through our healing technology groups. Holistic diagnostics, looking at all 7 parts of a person's well-being and then making that normal, accessible and normal for all providers. And finally, we live in an era of technology where we have help processing huge amounts of data. Before, if you gave someone an 8-page survey, some people might be able to understand it, but some people might not. Today, even if they don't understand it, they can input it into an AI health trained LLM model and say, based on these symptoms, what are the possible findings and root causes? And then use their medical training to say, does this sound legit or not legit? And then now I'm going to develop a testing protocol to confirm or deny these theories. Like we have the technology today. So, if you are in the position, listeners, to inform the development of health tech, billing practices, or training or anything else, this is an area where you can change lives with only 30 or 40 small maneuvers to accomplish this holistic intake process.
Well, you just reminded me, like when you're talking about AI and all of this, my mother's, so the geriatric doctors, I think, ironically, are quite young, right? And I love that because they've got all the newest and the best things. They're helping these people who are like 80 years older than that. Well, maybe not 80, but 60, right? Like they're young. So so they just started doing this. We go in there and the one says, do you mind if I use this technology to help me take notes? So he can do that and the AI does it and he can give his full attention to her and have completely accurate notes, right? It's awesome.
And then it can, with training, take away the important pieces and put it into some sort of predictive model. We can transform health, wellness, and human services, the care ecosystem. We are in the right time to do it. And that's why I just want to thank you so much for being willing to come share your experience. I don't know that a lot of providers get this kind of feedback because if someone goes to a provider, they can't help them, they just leave. They don't usually go back and say, here's how you didn't help me. And these other providers were able to help me. So that's why I think these conversations are really, really important.
So I went to, so I was having a lot of back pain and, somebody referred me to the back surgeon. So surgeon, they cut people. Like, that's all I know, right? But maybe they do other things. They're a doctor. So I go to this woman and I tell her, look, I don't want surgery. I don't want drugs and I don't want injections. I said, but how can I help myself like with this pain? She just blew me off. Did she say, that's what a surgeon does? That's what I do. You might need to see a different kind of profession. No. She just blew me off. And through just some conversations with different other people, I did find a non-surgical back specialist. And lo and behold, I had a bulging disc. Like, hello, there was a very real problem I had in my back. It's now been addressed through that's a whole other thing, but through some decompression treatment, like over time. And it's back to where it was and it's not bulging anymore. But
And no
there's
surgery and no
and no
painkillers
surgery,
and
no
no
injections, and
injections.
no drugs. Right, exactly. And then separately from that, I recently, through networking, I met this doctor and he does, I don't know if he does podcasts or trainings. He does something with PI, personal injury doctors. And he has this whole network, like over 4,000 doctors are part of this network. And he said he wanted me to do communication training with the doctors and their staff. He said, let me find out if they are interested. Well, yes, they were very interested. And so I put this little 10-minute talk together and, he and I did like a conversation and we did, like a little presentation for them. But because the problem they have is the communication with the patients or supplication, you have, they use like words, like, well, your back is out of alignment or whatever. Intimidate people and they don't let them ask questions. he said they were very interested in having communication training, how to communicate better with the patients. And they're afraid to tell them how the insurance works. Like, no, you have to come see me so I can report to the insurance so that they will cover this situation. But they don't tell the patients that. It's like back to the communication world, right? So there are some, they were interested. I haven't met with anybody yet, but I'm optimistic that some of them will come forward.
Yeah, that ability to connect with the person you're serving from a society place instead of this like godlike power dynamic, and you're just a peon, and the shifting the power dynamic by communicating as if the person in front of you is valuable and needs to understand you, and therefore communicating in their language, not your language, right?
And they'll get
Those are,
better if you do
yeah,
that, because they'll actually know
they
what's going
will.
on. They'll understand
Yeah,
the importance of keeping their appointments. They'll understand the importance of doing what you say to do.
because
Well,
at a
doctor,
very human level, they'll feel like you're trying to actually communicate with them, and therefore you care about them, and therefore you care about their well-being. That is what patients need to be compliant. They need to know, one, that you care about their well-being genuinely, and two, that you actually know how to help them in a way that's acceptable to them, right?
I
So,
think it's was it Teddy Roosevelt was is credited to say that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
yeah,
They
absolutely.
can't hear it. They just can't hear it if they can't feel it.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing how that training turns out, because I know that you can't harm anybody by teaching them how to communicate better, but you can invite them into the process of learning. Well, how do they get in touch with you if anyone else wants to connect and get your help in improving their communications?
Yeah. Well, they can look at my website, have people email me, Donna at DonnaRiccardo.com.
And you offer training for keynote speakers or any kind of communication. What's the breadth of your services?
Yeah, with speaking, speaker training, leadership, because that's all speaker. Even on networking, I actually have a little online class that's about networking because people, like we were saying earlier, they don't really know what to do. And there are things to do, and it's important to know which are the right places to go and what do you look for. And, that'll make it all way more comfortable if you know these things. So I do training on networking and speaking.
Well, I love how your profession, your purpose in life actually came out of this healing journey and this moment where you were like, something's wrong and I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to say die. And you've been going after it. So thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see where you get to impact the world next and where your healing journey takes you next. Thank you so much, Donna.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to check out our next episode here and use the comments to ask any questions or suggest any future topics. If this episode was helpful to you and you want to support our mission to improve U.S. healthcare and win the war on complex illness, you can donate any amount using the following QR code or the link in the description. As always, like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who would benefit from it. See you next time.